Well, it's 10 o'clock. So what I will do now is just go through our usual antitrust policy notice. Our full antitrust policy is available on the Linux Foundation website. If you have any questions and you're from a Linux Foundation member, you can talk with Andy Updegrove, our counsel for these matters. This is a regular monthly meeting for North America and, of course, Asia. We are going to recap what happened on the previous monthly meeting for North America and Europe. That means we're going to have a look at the work on the standards and core material. Actually, the last meeting was last week. It was rescheduled due to American holidays, and some important things were done. So it's useful that we have this meeting to recap, and so that people can ask questions. And of course, they can review the recording later. The first thing I will do, though, is very quickly share some of the project news. The most important item is that our security standard has passed the formal ISO ballot. That means we can expect it to be published on the ISO website in about 30 days. The major change will be that it will change from being called ISO IEC DIS 18974 into just ISO IEC 18974. It will be followed by the year 2023, so it's clear which version of the standard it is. Our conformance for this standard is already online, and anyone who conformed to our earlier versions of the standard, like OpenChain Security Assurance 1.0 or 1.1, or the DIS version, all of that is valid for 18974. And of course, companies have already been adopting this standard before the ISO ballot. We had big announcements from LG Electronics, BlackBerry, and Interneuron. So that's nice. We have not only got online conformance for the security standard, but of course we have it for the license standard as well. As it happens, the online conformance checklists have been improved and updated, so it's a lot more pretty and easy to conform to the standards now. The fact is that we're going to try to make it as integrated and as simple for people to arrive on the website and get conformant quickly. As I mentioned on the last slide, with the ballot passing for the security assurance specification, that is increasingly important. We had the 100th organization come to the OpenChain project and ask to be listed on our website. Now, of course, the organizations that come to us and ask to be listed on the website are a small percentage of the total organizations using the standard. But it's very nice to have 100 logos on the website as user companies that want to publicly share their conformance with other people. Now, on our North America and Europe call just a week ago, we talked about this a little bit. And we also talked about how on our website, we have increasing encouragement for organizations around the world to let us know if we can put their logo up, if they're using our standards. For those of you who spend a lot of time on our project, you'll know that the user base is pretty big. A PwC survey recently showed that 20% of organizations in Germany with 2,000 or more employees are using our licensing standard at the moment. Very recently, we had an announcement that will be of interest to our friends in, of course, Japan and Taiwan, as well as in South Korea. Line has announced that they're using our licensing standard for their open source program management office. This is quite nice. They're joining social media companies like Kakao here in Asia, in Korea, in announcing this. And of course, over in China, we're seeing increased engagement from their social networking companies as well. Now, apart from all of this announcement and activity around the standards and conformance, we've also had very important activity with our legal work group. They are building model provisions, so example contract language, to help lawyers think about how they can include our license and security standards in negotiations, discussions around procurement. Draft language is up and it is hosted on GitHub. This means that legal and IP departments can very quickly see examples of how to utilize informal legal language, our standards to help with their day-to-day work. This goes far beyond what OSPOs do, and it can be very useful, in particular with smaller companies in the supply chain, where the legal team might be starting from almost zero in thinking about how to use standards like this in dealing with their customer or their own supplier companies. Our export control work group, meanwhile, has been busy as well. They have been focusing on essentially volunteer work. There's lots of pre-existing material about export control and open source. And there's a particular resource that was made in the Netherlands by a Dutch professor. It has not been updated since 2013, and it is in a very simplistic HTML format. So in coordination with the original author, the volunteers are putting a version on GitHub in Markdown and beginning a process of finding export control experts to double check that the country by country information still appears to be valid enough. This is, of course, reference material. It's just intended to help guide, but it is potentially useful for OSPOs so they can know what to think about when they go to talk with their export control people in larger companies. Now, we had a mini summit in North America, very focused on tooling. You'll find the recordings online now. Big thank you to LF Events for making that happen. We had a very large meeting of the automotive work group with fantastic presentations from Hyundai and Volvo about how their OSPOs work and how they manage open source in particular. These meetings that we have on industries have brought out information that applies far beyond one place. As an example of the type of cross-domain information that can be useful, Christopher Wood, a fellow at Lockheed Martin, the defense company, also the co-chair of our specification work, gave an overarching talk on lessons learned after many decades in complex industrial production. Right. Talking about complex industrial production, let's have a look at what we did on the standards and core material recently. Now I'm going to switch screen shares around a bit as we do this. As usual, most of our work is focused on how do we bring together the global community? How do we have these live meetings, or the majority of our work, of course, happens on mailing lists and on GitHub? How do we arrange that type of thing? In the last couple of weeks, we have been looking at how do we update the license and security standards for the future. And people have been talking a lot about how do we make sure that things like the definitions are as clear and as useful as possible. Now, there has been a lot of talk about terms and definitions in general and SBOM definitions in future versions of the security and licensing specifications. I'm just putting up the issues that were covered in the last call. The last call was focused on the security specification, but the material, terms and definitions, and SBOM definitions are something applicable and applied to the licensing spec as well. Now, this is for the future versions of the standards. This is an editing process underway since last November, and it will continue until probably December this year, when the community suggestions will be passed to the governing board and the steering committee for quick review. They will return either acceptance of the suggestions, alternative notes, or in some cases, reject the suggestions. For that reason, it's very important that the discussions are tracked and as many opinions are collected as possible. So, looking at what has been going on, let's have a quick look at the terms and definitions item. This is something I'm going to essentially skip ahead to where we were at in the last meeting, which is we were taking something from the telecommunications work group about how we could utilize IETF definitions for must not, required, shall not, and so on. In other words, keywords used in specifications to have clear definitions for them. We got to having basically the language displayed on the screen. That is language under, I'm just pulling up on my screen to clear things out of the way, issue 30. So that's the first link there. And our conclusion was to review the IETF definitions against the ISO definitions. No conflicts were found. And to use the following language displayed on the screen in both the licensing and security spec. This is almost identical to the IETF RFC 2119, and it's reviewed against the supplementary information for ISO on definitions. Just a few tweaks, like putting quotation marks around some of the words to make clear what is being talked about at the request of non-native English speakers. This has been merged with both draft future specifications, and as per below, the issue was closed. But as always, the issue can be reopened at any time by anyone in the community with different views. I'm just going to pause here and see if anyone has any questions about this. And I'm aware that most of our audience is probably reviewing this offline. Most people come into this through the recording. And if that's the case, you can send your questions to our mailing lists, or you can open the GitHub issue and add your comments there. Anyway, pausing here, does anyone have any comments or suggestions based on what was finalized on the last call, which in turn was based on discussions on the 2 calls before that, so throughout June and July so far? Okay, if there's no comments or suggestions, as usual for us, that means that we will proceed. The next item that was discussed is the SBOM definition and alignment with the security and licensing spec. So I'm going to share the screen. Oh, it's already sharing. That's excellent. I'm going to show the screen and show where the community got to on the discussions with the calls. So this was back and forth with the community about having a definition for SBOM, which was taking into account developments in the maturity of the market since we first wrote a definition in around 2016, and especially taking into account things like the NTIA messaging. The actual issue, and this is just the issue on the security spec side, goes on quite a bit as different ideas were suggested. That's the second link there. And it came out of another issue on the licensing spec itself, which is now in the link. Okay, we're not going to go through all the history here. I'm going to skip to the end and show you what was suggested as the end point. In the chat, you'll see it, and it's also highlighted on the screen. That's the information we have, and that is open for discussions, but the issue has been closed as it stands because it is regarded as currently done as per calls running over the last, I think, 5 months. But, you know, if you have a comment, now is one of the moments to raise it. Pausing there.
Then I have one question.
Yes.
Are there any description about SBOM in the license spec, OpenChain another license specification? This definition is only located in security specification.
Yes.
Oh.
So the actual definition here is synchronized between both the current and the future. So they are synchronizing, and anything that's just included in the security specification can be flagged as a new issue, as something that should also be included in licensing. But our conclusion was to use this definition, yet open a new issue about what is a quality or complete SBOM for licensing or security. So maybe this can help address part of your topic.
Sure. Okay.
And that is here. It's ready. Okay. So we mentioned if we're going to do that, what do we want to do in terms of our communication? And it turns out that one of our work groups, the work group for telco, has been working on SBOM stuff for the telco industry. And I'm just going to put what I'm putting into the chat just to make the links available. I put the link to the telco thing in there, but actually it's all on the screen right here. Their telco specification is a reference specification. In other words, it's not something that OpenChain is currently officially turning into a standard, but it is something they're editing and completing. The stuff on the screen you see right now is basically what they defined as the minimum elements of an SBOM for the telco industry. And they were focused on SPDX. So what they did was actually very generic. They decided to have various fields focused on various topics, such as, what's the version of the, what would you call it? What's the version of the SBOM being used and matters like that. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put the issue into the chat. It is there now. So you can just open this yourself. With the material they created, they're focusing on what's required by SPDX and what's required by the NTIA SBOM elements and what should be included. They only have one should here. They want package URLs. Now, the basic suggestion, if we want to define what should be in a generic SBOM, so you can help choose your SBOM, is that we maybe take their language and make some adjustments. This is just a first iteration, but it would be basically the same as them, but start by identifying the SBOM type. So you know, is it SPDX? Is it Cyclone? Is it something else? And then it continues with almost the same things throughout. And that's the first proposal, that if we want to include in our specifications what is a quality or complete SBOM, which is something we reference in the SBOM definition, then this material might be it. What do you think?
Okay. I pasted in a chat box. I'm working have already proposed a similar spec to a SPDX working group.
This is
So,
SPDX Lite, is that?
right, yes,
Yes.
yes, and Kate-san have already dropped this meeting, but we will have a meeting next week, July 25. So, are there any needs to synchronize this spec created by telco work group and so on? If
Oh, yes.
there are, oh, okay. If there is a need, I will check the difference and merge to synchronize the specification. And fortunately, I will discuss about this meeting with Ninjoji-san tomorrow. So, and we will meet. We will meet with Shane tomorrow. So, so fortunately, yeah, we'd like to discuss with you about this thing.
This would be great. Now, there are possibly going to be some differences between SPDX Lite and the generic information,
Mhm.
but we should definitely have that discussion. I do have a question. I see that this issue is proposals of a SPDX Lite profile, but I don't actually see the profile itself here. Maybe it's
Okay.
here. Let me see. I don't see it on this. I see your note. Ah, okay. It's a PowerPoint. Okay. All right. I'm going to download this PowerPoint right now.
Sorry.
No, not at all.
We we had a meeting with Gary O'Neill from the SPDX4G, and we had a meeting with him on the July 11th. And we explained the background of the SPDX Lite or our requirements by using this material.
Okay, I'm just going to share this item so we have a quick look. Kidoki,
After 22, page 22.
kidoki. Okay, so this is explaining minimum elements and requirements. Oh, that's so complex.
Yes, this is the original SPDX. And this explains the package profile, package information from the original SPDX 3.0 version.
I see. And then the light profile picks out these items.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I definitely think we should look at having some synchronization on this so that people are aware. Package URL, package version, concluded license, declared license, copyright text. Interesting. So concluded license and declared license assumes that you are actively scanning. Okay, comment creation info. So it doesn't seem super different from
Yeah,
from what
so
we
it's a
have
special
here.
spec. Yes, I think so.
Not very different. So
Mhm.
synchronizing between them would be really good. I guess the challenge, the task is to take these items out and just put them into a list. If you want, I can take that as an action item and add them to our open issue. So that will be adding them to our issue about having our quality or complete SBOM for licensing or security cases. I have one question. Or no, this
Yeah.
is really an SPDX question. My question is things like SPDX ID, it's not quite clear what that is.
Uh, SPDX defines on unique ID
So this
to
license,
distinguish every element.
okay.
So this field doesn't have any meanings, but we use this ID to distinguish each SPDX element.
Got it. Got it.
which means the ID is unique, is enough without any meaning.
Uh, I don't know well, but I think it documents scope.
Okay. Okay. The reason I was asking is because I saw it in the telco thing. Um, sorry, I'm slow here. I saw it in the telco thing. They had it SPDX ID,
Yeah.
SPDX ID, and in the generic variant, I just made a note. We have to work out what SPDX ID is.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
SPDX will be created by any tools, and the tool needed to distinguish every what is the distinguish to about the element is described for the software package. So they have or unique ID in the document.
okay. 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 Uh, that kind of makes sense to me. I need to read more about SPDX3, but it's fantastic that we have this slide deck. This slide deck that you referenced. Looking at the proposal of SPDX Lite, I'm going through this very quickly. I don't see exactly how to get your slide deck from here. I guess it must be through here.
This the PowerPoint material I pasted in the chat box is not related to the SPDX issue on the SPDX3 model.
Okay,
We use the material at the meeting with the SPDX guys.
okay. I just wanted to see if I refer to the SPDX issue, how people could see what we were talking about. The SPDX issue is a little bit difficult to see what
Yes.
fields are suggested. Okay. Mm. Okay, I'll have to try to find out how to get this out of it.
Yes, I've already investigated how to discuss in the SPDX working group and how to understand the SPDX3 model. So, and I've already created the how to understand the SPDX version 3.0. So I can explain the detail of the SPDX 3.0.
That's great. And
Yeah.
what in particular that has me slightly baffled, and maybe you could help, is in the proposal by Yoshi about the pull request for the SPDX Lite profile.
Mhm.
I see the pull request. I just don't see the data showing his exact information, showing the profile. So perhaps if you could share that with me, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull it out and I just can't find the exact link to pull it out. So I just want to, if possible, have a link to the exact item in this pull request somewhere here, showing exactly the field elements of SPDX Lite. Your slides are perfect, but they're not linked in this. So if there's somewhere in this that I can find the exact proposal, that would be really good. I see one commit. But it's spread across many components, like license, like package,
Yes.
relationship, type, comment. It's a bit confusing.
Yes.
Oh, you got the model.
Exact pull request is coming from here.
Okay,
Yeah, but there is a manner to how to propose the pull request in the SPDX working group.
got it.
So we discuss about the SPDX Lite profile on here at here, and after that, Ito Yoshi send a pull request from here.
Okay, understood. Thank you for pulling this out.
Yeah.
In that case, I will use this material and his pull request as reference, but I will use your slide deck as the actual description for us,
Yes.
because that's very clear.
Yes. In the previous materials, I explained how to send a pull request from page 14
Oh, okay.
to
Okay. This
20. Yeah.
explains. Wow.
Yes. And our process is described in the last slide.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes. 20.
28.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'll use the two links from his pull request and the original, but I will use your slide deck to help our community understand how, because obviously their workflow is very different to ours and it's quite complex.
Yes.
So, yeah. All right. I also sent a message to Kate, just asking if there were any items she wanted to cover, because I saw her on the call, but she dropped just after the software bill of materials definition discussion. Okay, so in that case, I understand our action item is to include the SPDX Lite profile into our discussion on one moment, my apologies. The XPDX Lite profile into our discussion here. Yeah, agnostic SBOM for potentially inclusion in our standards. So below this, I'll add the SPDX Lite profile and note that we might want to synchronize and open that discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is really, really good to synchronize. We do not want to fall out of sync with each other. And we want to make sure that even if we end up not including all or the same information, we know why. I actually think that because we have a low live attendance on this call, my suggestion is we leave it here. We move to offline and we focus the discussion on this generic or agnostic SBOM language and synchronization with SPDX Lite. if there's no objections to that, then we've covered actually today's agenda. We've covered today's agenda. So I'll just move to the any other business. Does anyone have any other business they would like to cover? All right, if there's no other business, we will close this meeting. Kubota-san, SE, thank you for being here live. I'll make sure our Japanese community, Chinese and Korean communities get this information as soon as possible.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank-
day.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.